Brother Ron, and welcome to We All Be News Radio and TV, the news-free Dixie for the 21st century.
A lot of sick stuff used to go on, all kinds of stuff. Like when I first started practicing law 40-some years ago, and I'd get into these outer counties, get a case up there, you'd get in these families, and nobody's opening their mouth, but you look at the family, and then there's one very obviously different with a lot of white in them. And when you get to inquiring, you find out that mama was coming home from work when 5 white boys drunk were driving around in their Ford after a football game, spotted her walking, stopped, threw her off in the hedges, and raped her. So she doesn't know which one of the 5 is the daddy, but everybody in the family knows that it's one of those 5 white boys who raped her, who is the father of this child. It looks like that. But they accept the child, you know, and they go on. Quite frankly, that would have been cause to go to war. To me.
That's interesting. Wow.
I don't care when it was. Like my grandfather and one of his brothers, a great uncle of mine, had to leave Shreveport, Louisiana, because they murdered a deputy sheriff who had killed or helped they murdered 2 deputy sheriffs who were responsible for having one of their brothers lynched.
Wow.
Now, my grandfather went on and became a doctor, a physician. But, you know, he had to get on up.
Yeah, I heard Shreveport was a tough place. They even roughed up Sam Cooke when he tried to check into the Holiday Inn in Shreveport. They beat him up a little bit. The police did. They roughed him up.
Yeah, well, my grandfather and my great uncle murdered 2 deputy sheriffs in cold blood. Shot them both right between the eyes at close range.
Wow, that's like some unforgiving Clint Eastwood stuff or OK Corral type of stuff.
Exactly.
That's like what white people be doing. Like, wow, they had some balls.
Yeah, and granddad lived to be 100-some years old.
Wow. So he got to change his identity, or he kept his last name and everything? He didn't change it?
Oh, yeah. He just left.
Wow.
He went to Mississippi, so he left me a journal, and it's interesting. His old lawyer gave it to me after when I was in my early 30s, and I ran into the old guy. And he said, your doctor, your granddaddy named William Dorsey? I said, yeah. Dr. Dorsey? Said, yeah. He said, I got something for you.
Wow.
He left this for you in safekeeping for you. He knew you were around, and he said, you know, when he gets grown, if you see him, give it to him. So I told my mother she was still alive, and she said, I suspected something like that happened. Everybody in the family did, but they didn't talk about it.
Wow. Okay, so you're going to turn that into a movie or something? What are you going to do with the information, Judge?
I don't know.
It's like a hell of a story.
My grandfather and Alex Haley's grandfather practiced medicine together up in Jackson, Tennessee.
Wow.
They used one of the first black pharmacists. His granddaughter's Rita Porter around here. She's a retired school principal, real nice lady. And Rita Porter's also a descendant of this guy that is the subject of the Free State of Jones, Mississippi.
Okay.
If you've ever seen the movie.
Yeah, I've seen the movie.
It's interesting because it's this white boy who deserted from the Confederate Army. He set up some resistance. They set up a free state. They never could get the Union to cooperate with them, even though they were doing guerrilla tactics against the Confederate Army. And they were freeing black folk. So he, after the war, registered some to vote. They got armed and moved on to white folks, said they'll vote. He had a child by this former slave.
Mm.
And the movie fast forwarded to 1947 when this white man, or at least everybody thought he was a white man, was being prosecuted and tried for a felony for marrying a white woman. And the guy was the grandson of the person, the Free State of Jones, Mississippi. Jones was the guy's name, so this woman that I know is a descendant.
Wow.
But it's interesting, they convicted him, sentenced him to 10 years in the state penitentiary down in Mississippi, but the Mississippi Supreme Court overturned the conviction. Basically, they manufactured a basis using Mississippi. Well, under Mississippi law, they had to manufacture a fictional basis to overturn the conviction. But what it was all about is they did not want the United States Supreme Court involved in this case. They let him out of jail.
Wow.
The interesting thing, and they allude to it in the movie, is at that time, thanks to Robert Church's father, who had been the biggest plantation owner before and after the war in Mississippi, they had a set of statutes in Mississippi that allowed someone with no more than 1/4 known colored ancestry to be declared white if he had 2 white sponsors. And to the satisfaction of the judge, he looked white. That was on the books up until the 1930s, and that was a remark that he hadn't availed himself of. That had that been so, they couldn't have prosecuted him.
Wow.
There's all kinds of sickness going around in this. Tennessee's rule was no more than 1/8 colored ancestry. Oh, yeah. Louisiana was 1/16. Virginia, 1/8. And Alabama was 1/4. Arkansas, I think it was 1/4.
Wow.
That's the reason they had that, was after the Civil War, a lot of these rich plantation owners found that their sons had been killed in the Civil War, so they had no heirs. And when you have no heirs, the property escheats to the state. In other words, the state would take it after you died. So they had sons, sometimes daughters, by their slave mistresses. So they would give it to somebody that was part kin. But then they had rules that would deprive those people of full rights to fee simple absolute property interest. So they sponsored this stuff. That is, Robert Church's grandfather sponsored stuff all around the South since he was a rich man, to have an avenue to get these children of slave mistresses declared to be white. Now, an interesting thing, those who are from Memphis may have heard of Boss Crump.
All right.
Boss Crump controlled Tennessee politics for decades, and thanks to him, since he relied upon a black bloc vote to get elected, blacks never had the vote stripped from them like they did in other places. But guess how Boss Crump got to Memphis? Robert Church's daddy got tired of white folk taking his son's property that he had bought for his son. So he paid for the person that became Boss Crump to come to Memphis to protect his son's interest. So Boss Crump became Boss Crump because he figured out the best way to do it was politically. So just about all black people in Memphis were Republican then, and they had an organization called the Lincoln Republicans. So they voted as a black bloc vote. Now, the funny thing is, if you went to or go to a Lincoln Republican meeting now, it's 100% white. And they are shocked to find out that it was some black people that started it.
Wow.
I know I went to one of the meetings just to check out the political scene. What are you doing here? I said, well, question is, what are you doing here? This is a black organization, huh? But I did that deliberately to shake some people up, and then I showed the charter that they had and who chartered it and how it was for black folks. So you got all these white folk in there, conservative, that don't like us, and they got an organization they're all very much behind and don't realize that black people started. Which is interesting. Right now, black folk act like the Democratic Party bought and bred them, whereas the Democrats used to be our worst enemies, and the Republicans are some kind of anathema, but actually we switched parties in there. So the Republicans were founded in the 1850s on the basis of freeing the slave and getting rid of slavery. The Democratic Party was founded much earlier, and part of their charter is to support, further, and expand the institution of slavery. And Hillary Clinton, back in the 60s, was a staunch Republican. She was chairwoman of the Young Republicans at her all-girls school, Wesley, and she participated in a whole lot of stuff around the country that was anti-black, including maintaining official segregation at the University of Illinois' Chicago campus, and out there on the picket lines supporting segregation with her parents when King came to Chicago in '67 to help protest the official segregation in the Chicago suburbs. Now, see, there's a difference, by the way, between segregation and integration. People keep saying integration ruined everything. Well, it wasn't integration the way it was actually played out. It was desegregation. For example, there's a water fountain that only, there are water fountains in a public building. Certain water fountains are restricted to white people and others are permitted to colored folk. And if white folk want to use the colored stuff or colored restroom because theirs is overfilled, the black folk are supposed to yield to them. Now, that's wrong. See, that's called segregation.